This is the Mo-Man mic.
The Mo-Man mic for Mo-Men.
Welcome back to the Between Breaths podcast. We are here at the Ice Bath Co. with Luke.
How
and
we doing?
We're doing a 3, 2, 1 head dump. Woohoo! Lovely. Right, so take a seat, Luke. We're if you
Come and join us.
This is the first time I've done a podcast in an ice bath.
You're welcome.
It's the first time. I'll try not to wee. Normally it makes me. But just for the listeners, if you haven't watched the podcast before and don't watch it on YouTube, by all means listen to it on any podcast platform you want to. It is available on all podcast platforms. This is definitely a podcast to watch because. Yeah, just to prove that we are in fact, particularly if you like watching half naked or more than half naked.
Very much more than half naked men in freezing cold water chatting about ice baths and health.
And if you want to see me look like a tiny little schoolboy, then because the man next to me in the ice bath next to me is an absolute behemoth. Anyway, we are going to be talking about, ice, health, wellness, but also for those of you that are coaches, business owners, trying to run your own coaching business. Luke has been very successful not only in changing people's lives of how they feel and how they manage stress and everything that the ice bath does, but also for being able to create a business that allows you to do a lot more. I think of it as almost like outreach and giving back because the business itself is successful. So we'll talk about that. I think it'll be very helpful for those of us that are entrepreneurs and our own business owners. But before we get started with the podcast, shout out to those podcast sponsors. You know the score these days, guys. But look, here a little travel sample pack, the Ketone IQ from hvmn.com. Fits even in your little ice bath for you. If you haven't checked them out yet, the code JACO gives you 20% off. Head over to www.hvmn.com/JACO and check out Ketone IQ from HVMN.
Get going.
Right, is that long enough that we can now get out and do the rest of the... How long are we supposed to be in here for?
Oh, mate, anything.
We enter this world taking our first breath, and sadly, we leave this place taking our last. And what I want to do with this podcast is to explore what happens between those breaths. I'm David Jackson, Jacko, and this is the Between Breaths podcast.
So really been great getting to know Luke over the last few months.
Yeah.
Interestingly, a lot of you will have come across the business and probably seen the big beard potentially, or certainly know of the ice baths. I think I came when we first met, and you were saying, and I'll let you share the story of like how it all sort of started. It made me think. I reckon I maybe had seen you on Instagram after only maybe just a few months of you getting going, because it's not been that long, has it? But it's been it's been astronomical, the effect. Yeah, just introduce yourself and
So Luke, the Ice Bath Company. It's well, as we were saying, it all started from a friend of mine who'd asked me to do an ice bath charity event, which was to take an ice bath a day, every single day for a month, and I loved it. So I was in prep at the time for bodybuilding, and I've got this really big inner geek inside of me. So the more I got into it,
because you're massive.
That's it. Yeah. So anything that's there is just huge. Yeah. So the more I got into it, and the more I sort of delved into the science behind it, the more I could really geek out on it. Not just on the physical sort of benefits for it, but I love and I'm really passionate about the mental health benefits of it. It ticks so many different boxes for me. So for me, when I then went out to market on my own and thought, you know what, I want to try and get my own ice bath, I was staggered at the costs of it. I found a supplier in Australia, there was one in Finland, I think, a couple over in the States, and then with shipping and duties and all sorts, it was 10, 15 grand or so, and I thought, wow, that's mad. Yeah. Absolutely mad. So I thought
before that you were playing around with some of the, you took the mickey out of my little Amazon jobbing, but you were playing around with stuff like that and wheelie bins and things.
Yeah, wheelie bins. The first one that I started in was.
Do you fit in a wheelie bin?
Just about, the 360 litre ones that you can get. But I started off in a toolbox that I found in the garage.
A toolbox?
A toolbox. Literally, I just fit in the thing, but it was a kind of run what you brung
That's
event.
a big toolbox.
It was a big toolbox, more a tool storage box. And so yeah, literally I filled it up, had a big crack down it. So literally I had to fill it up every single time I was using it because it would just go everywhere.
Yeah, my little Amazon jobby turned up and the valve thing didn't work, so I had to fill that up every single time. It was terrible on water in the environment.
It's a pain. So from my point of view, my background's in manufacturing and in product design, and I thought if I could design something that looks great in somebody's garden, because 90% of these are going into gardens,
and they do, like, fair play.
Thank you.
The
sort of design elements in my head is I love the whiskey barrel look.
Yeah.
They're a pain in the neck to maintain. So I thought if we could sort of do a hybrid whiskey barrel, sauna smelling kind of ice bath that would sit well either in a garden, in a real natural environment, or in a wellness centre next to a sauna or something, and make it a third of the price of anything else, we could really make cold water and the benefits of cold water so much more accessible. And thankfully, it was a risk that paid off. But that's it for me. I think social media has been a really huge avenue for us for business growth, and I think you can use it either to dopamine, when you're sitting down and you're going through and you're scrolling and trying to get those dopamine hits and really wasting time on there, or you can use it to build something special, and that's what we've really been able to do. So, working with some pretty incredible people throughout this journey. And the number one reason for that is to be able to make as much noise as possible, to really spread the message that there's something there that is really idiot-proof as a way of an ice bath, and affordable. Yeah. And I know that affordable is very much subjective, but we've tried to design it and to put it out there as affordable as possible to as many as possible.
Yeah, for the quality that you're getting, and there's a difference between this and a 50 quid jobby.
But you've got to start somewhere. You've got to start somewhere, and we get asked a lot of times.
And to be fair, like, I'll share like a little thing of like the valve on it were broke, and it was like an Amazon jobby from China or whatever, and I emailed to say the things that, but they never sent me one. But I was going through a period where last year, when my dad was passing away from cancer, and my ice bath in the morning, that was, even though it was my crappy little jobby thing, it served me a massive purpose at the time. And as you've already said, like, there's affordable and everyone's got different things that they can afford, but I want to give a little space for you to be able to shine your light in that. I had an email from someone that you met. I think you'll be able to tell the story, but I'll just tee it up, because you might not have brought. Luke is very humble as well, and like, you might not have necessarily brought this up, and there's a few occasions, but one, I even got an email from the guy because you'd recommended, in terms of breathing, that you should check out the free course that I've got, and he emailed me thanking for it and whatnot. But he'd been at a show or come to see, and he was looking at the bass, but numbing and ahhing a lot, because I think the cost was a bit challenging for him, and I think he had some quite strong reasons as to some life events that were really challenging for him, and he said, and Luke just said, have it, and you just gave it, and this is just tell us a bit about those types, because it's not a one-off. Tell us a bit about those stories. And when I met you at the actual warehouse, you mentioned how, and this is I think a very useful bit for people that are entrepreneurs or business owners, about like, it's okay to make money if you're going to so being able to charge people for wellness things, but then what are you going to then do with it? Are you doing it just to make yourself rich, or are you actually doing it so you can, this is a wellness centre that you've made. You wouldn't be able to make, if your business wasn't successful, you couldn't do something like this and make it even more accessible for people. And I love the stories of the people when you just go, there you go, have it for free. Tell us a bit about that. And shine your light. No, it is. It's like, you don't have to do this.
No, and it's not something that
it shows what's in your heart.
Yeah, thank you. And it's not something that we do shout about. There's probably a number of reasons for that, but yeah, I mean, this gentleman in particular, I'd met him at a show, and we'd connected, and he was ex-policeman. He'd just recently found out that he had, and I get emotional thinking about it. He just recently found out that he had terminal brain cancer, and so there was me, there was him and his son, and just before he'd opened up to me, he sent his son away because his son they'd just recently sort of found this out, and he said, listen, I've been using a whiskey barrel. He says, but I keep coming out in rashes. He'd just gone through chemo, and I guess his immune system was obviously shot, and because of the yeast and whatnot that's in whiskey barrels, because of their past lives, whenever he was getting out, he was covered in rashes. But he said the cold water was a massive, massive help in the reduction of brain swelling.
Right.
And he said that he felt both a noticeable difference because of, through headaches and all sorts, but he said, look, I'm just putting all of my money into the house so that when I do pass, and he says, I've not asked when, he says, but when I do pass, my son's looked after. Yeah. And flipping out, two grown men crying with each other in the middle of the NEC in Birmingham.
Right, yeah.
And he says, so I'd love to get one. I just looked at him, I said, listen, let's get one to you. Let's get one to you. He's a dad, I'm a dad, and it really rung true to me that even if this gave him another day, even if it gave him another half a day, or whatever the time span is with him using an ice bath, that he could then spend with his kid. For me, that's the magic. That's the magic, and to be in a position to be able to do that is incredible. This is what I'm a firm believer that people work with people, and I love working with people. That's my passion. I love being around people like yourself, people with an incredible energy. But I'm also understanding that this isn't in the price range for everybody. That everybody has their struggles, and there are times, when there's somebody who's come on and that I've been able to really sort of connect with, or I've heard a story that we've really been able to help, because cold water and all of this, cold water, the breath work, the mindfulness, all of this sort of space isn't just woo-ha. It's not just this sort of intangible magic that's there, because once it's practiced, what this is about really is changing lives. This is a real, I believe, an honest sort of depiction of the work that we do is the opportunity to change lives. Through the breath work, through cold water, through whatever sort of area this is in. It's people. This is what I do. What I do.
No, it's powerful story and powerful work, and I think that there's a couple of passions that I think that we share upon or have clicked on in our early conversations of getting to know each other, and one obviously around that, like doing work that is changing people's lives positively. The other is around sort of like research.
Yes.
Which is but interesting that we both like it, but then at the same time have like this like wider lens of like if something makes you feel better, then you don't have to wait for there to be a study that comes out that was done on 10 people that said like doing X work.
That's right. Exactly.
That you can actually go, well, because there's some things that are just not going to be able to be measured.
Yeah.
Like with that gentleman there, like how the impact of that on his life now ongoing, like there isn't a study to measure like how much that's improved, and it doesn't matter that there isn't.
Yeah.
And just to think that, and where are you at with that side of like, there was obviously more and more research coming out on cold water, but where are you, I'm just interested to see, obviously that's not necessarily, it's anything that comes out that's positive about it, which is what it is. It's all positive at the moment. It's very good for your business, but there's certain things that, I think I respect about the conversations we've had is just because something comes out that might be quite positive about using cold water for something, if it's not in line with your own theories and methodologies and just what you stand for,
I'll call it out.
I'll
call it out. And there's been lots of things, whether that's specific weight loss or fat loss in for two of the big things that for me really sort of have a bee in my bonnet about, because I honestly feel that if you put motivational music behind somebody who calls themselves a doctor, it doesn't matter what sphere that is, you could almost, the content of that speech could be anything. A majority of individuals will listen to that and just nod. And just take that in as gospel without doing any of their own individual research or prior knowledge to that, but they take it as gospel and then run with it. So they then listen to that, they then spread that message to their friend, and it may just be ever so slightly changed or whatever it is. But I'm a firm believer of doing your own research, which means not just delving into the geeky scientific stuff, but it means testing for yourself. Which for me, I'm my own guinea pig. So I will test my heart rate within hot water, cold water, saunas, and the differences between the difference. For all of those. Also, we're doing some work coming up with the Blood Lab, who look after a lot of athletes with their blood work, but also we're looking to work with them specifically on inflammatory markers, to really be able to show the benefits of cold water for inflammatory markers for athletes. Not just that, of when is best to use an ice bath, because within this sphere of cold water, there's a lot of bro science that's around, and there's a lot of podcasts that are taken as gospel, which sort of handpick particular studies, and scientific study world with the scientific papers specifically on cold water. For every paper that says one thing, there's another paper that's stating almost the exact opposite to it. So this is where, for me, I believe there isn't a one-size-fits-all. So when somebody says, what's the best temperature to have for an ice bath, you can have a roundabout general idea, but it doesn't mean that what your body is going to take is going to be the same for what my body takes. I mean, a lot of people, for example, will take their ice bath in the morning because of circadian rhythm, and that's going to be best for that, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I take my ice bath literally right before I go to bed, which most will say, for your circadian rhythm, it's bonkers, it's rubbish, it's going to knock you way out. But I sleep like a baby when doing that. So it's about additional research within the scientific world, but also additional research and playing with really what is going to work best for you and your body, and asking questions. Asking other people, what's working for you, getting other different ideas, and not just taking one singular sort of space for
not getting your input just from one place, potentially.
100%.
And I think respecting those individual differences, the same with like breathing techniques, is like there's that umbrella of like, okay, we know that like our nervous system is affected by X, Y, and Z with our breathing. We know that like the nose is going to be better than the mouth, but the individual cadences that we work at, and when we do these things, like there can be an oversimplification of certain things that means that we don't treat the individual, we don't look at individualizing stuff. I think from what your point is great and encouragement is individualizing it for ourselves through experience and trusting our own self to go like, okay, when I do X, like it makes me feel better, and when I do Y, it doesn't, and therefore I'm starting to
100%.
tailor things a little bit for ourselves. I think that's a massive, like for me, like a massive encouragement for people that they need to do that. And I guess just one little piece for me on when we're talking about research papers and studies is, don't be afraid to actually go, if someone references something, don't be afraid to actually just go on Google, just type in the thing, and it will come up on PubMed or something. And you can 9 times out of 10 you can access it for free, and you can actually just have a look and see what what did it actually say rather than what is someone saying about it? And
it gives you a much broader scope of picture as well of what the study was actually about, and also how big or small the cohort was that they were working with.
Was it just men, or was there women involved?
Exactly,
Where in the
was it a group of 5 people? Was it a group of 1,500 people? It can really give you a much more of a clearer vision on it. But I think whether it's breathwork, whether it's cold water, whether it's going to the gym, it doesn't matter what kind of exercise activity you're doing, you need to have an outcome-orientated approach to that training. And this is training, I believe. It's stressor training. The breathwork as well is a type of training. So, as we've just done today, with down regulation and looking at our sort of sleep, ways that we're able to better that, it's a type of training. The modality of that is going to be different. If we're going to get hyped up and we're just about to get into a game, our breathing techniques are going to be different. And same with ice bath, depending on what the outcome we're looking at for the ice bath, our protocol for that would be different. So, it's not so much what's the best temperature, what's the best time. The question always going to be back is, what are you trying to achieve with it? What's the best breathing technique? What are you trying to achieve from it? What's the best training routine in the gym? Well, what are you trying to achieve from it? Because then you can start to piece together the protocol for that.
Often people we don't ask that question because we want a simpler answer. We want is like, tell me what is better. Is 10 degrees better than 12 or whatever the temperature is, or is this exercise better than that? Like, tell me what it is, and then I'm going to try and do it. I think the other one that we often fall into, particularly those that are competitive. I certainly went through this where we weren't going in cold water that we could control a temperature control ice, but we were just going in the lake. But it was like, right, it's snowing today. Like, get us some. Yes, it's 0. Can we stay in longer? And we turned it into a competition. And actually, there's a couple of friends of ours that was doing it with during COVID, like Owen, that Owen Jackson, shout out, and Harvey Gibson, shout out. Where we were socially distanced, but and when we sort of embraced it as an experience of it, it doesn't matter what the temperature is. We're going there to immerse ourselves in nature. And we were in a lake. We were very lucky that there was a lot of nature around. So when you were there and peaceful and still with nature, the ducks would come right up close to you, and it would be when we stopped making it about being a competition, it became like a magical experience. It sounds a bit whatever, but it makes sense. It was, and then that broadens out past what have we studied about cold water for my brown fat, and it broadens it out to all those things that. But you can't measure that. Which I think is. I think the two of us have a message on that. I'd like to people to embrace that and embrace what you feel and encourage that with people.
But also to do your own tests. Do your own tests. Do your own studies. We've done some work with.
We hooked you up with the Hanu Health is
incredible.
Dr. J Wells. I had it measures. Heart rate variability, but in real time. And we saw you go from as low as 5 in the morning after a stressful morning to, I think, 35, 40 odd, once we'd come out of, not initially going in, but coming then out of the ice bath. And another real spike with the down regulation breathing. We've done, I think before, I do want to finish to give you for you to give people some advice about building businesses, because I think people in conversation a lot of time with other breathing coaches, sometimes the first question someone else that's a breathing coach might ask me is they will ask, so is this your full-time job? Is this all that you do? Because a lot of the time
really
because a lot of the time for people it isn't for probably a number of different reasons. It's not working out financially, even though it's their passion to become that, so they're supplementing that income with another job or whatever the case may be. So I do want to give that, but at the end. But we've gone through a few things today for your breathing, particularly around like helping the airway be a bit clearer and to help around getting off to sleep easier after the ice bath. And I'm just interested in your sort of raw
I've honestly loved it because I think that we sort of said briefly earlier. There's a lot of fixation and a knowledge and understanding on the importance of general physical health. And you touched on it last time you'd come to visit, that if you go to a doctor's and you're having a full checkup, he'll do bloods, he'll do X, he'll do Y, he'll do Z. There is nothing which has a look at your breathing. What's your breathing rate? What's your heart rate variability rate at? Because it gives a much more clearer understanding, because anxiety can be caused through mouth breathing, excessive breathing, all sorts.
Yeah, so, being more sensitive to CO2, you're more prone to anxiety, which is directly related to our breathing. Yeah.
But having the knowledge and an understanding of that, but then also mechanically being able to feel the breath, for me, was extremely eye-opening today, because I've always thought that I've not been a terrible breather, that I've tried to nose breathe as much as possible, but actually I'm still really on the beginning of the journey of really understanding not just the mechanics of it, but what the effect the breathwork can have on me on a day-to-day basis, whether that's with stress, whether that's with trying to get to sleep better and down-regulating my brain and my mind and coming down off of the day. Again, and just sort of trying to play around with different breath protocols to be able to get me in a state to do X, Y, or Z, doesn't matter what it is. So I think it's been extremely eye-opening, mate, and I've loved it.
And even one that we'll put some video. There'll be some videos going on YouTube and on Instagram. But there was one. There's a nice down regulation one. But there'll be an interesting one for people. I think because you found it as well. It is a little bit.
The head.
We had a big discrepancy between your internal rotation right and left shoulder. So bodybuilding background. I said, have you ever injured your shoulders? You're like, no. I was like, oh crikey. But generally speaking, we do a lot of like bench press, shoulder press, a lot of pressing type of movements and whatnot. It can have some effects on the shoulder, and something that I've been exploring recently, and you were a prime example of this, of like when we're really lacking internal rotation on the shoulder, the position of the rib cage can play a real big role in that. And so you had quite a big difference between left and right, and a drill to get you breathing into that side that was stuck.
That's it.
We did 2 breaths, and like
job done. It was already a noticeable improvement. It was crazy. But it's little things like that, not knowing, for me, that anything like that could have an effect on the rotation of my shoulder, for example. Through breath work is mad.
Yeah. And we built like that as an example just for people visually as well, if you're watching, like the scapula, so the shoulder blade, the position of that will affect the rotation of your humeral head. The scapula lives on, rides on, and is with the rib cage. So wherever your rib cage is, your shoulder blade is going to be. So if we can get the rib cage, 1, in a better position, and 2, moving a little bit better, that scapula is going to sit in a happier position, and that can free up some, not with everyone, depending on what's causing our shoulder restriction, but that can be a really quick, easy win for people. Just create a little bit of freedom of movement by just positioning stuff a little bit closer to where they were, where God wanted to put them on you when He put you on the earth, maybe.
Instead of squashing them constantly. I mean, business-wise, though, I think one of the biggest limiting factors for people in this space is having a belief that they can earn money, especially turn this kind of work into their full-time work.
Because often it's work that you do that if you weren't getting paid for it, you'd still do it.
Oh yeah,
so that's you love it. That's exactly
as a facilitator, you love it.
It's the beauty of it, but at the same time, it puts people.
And
in
a lot may feel
almost
bad for charging. I do breath work or cold water or mindfulness, meditation, yoga, whatever it is in this space. I think one of the biggest first hurdles to sort of overcome is that belief, and also that money's not bad. The asking for money for your service. If you honestly believe that the service or product that you are offering is worth the value that you're charging, you need to run with it. If you don't believe your service,
I think that can be for people of when we're starting, like confidence in our own self.
Yes.
Like even I had when I came in this morning and you were like asking me, like, how are you doing? I was like, think how's things going? Type thing. I was like, think I'm all right. And you were like, oh, that's an odds. Like, you were like, what's up with you?
What's happened?
But I'll just be honest with people this morning. I'll be more honest with people in this now than I was just either. Like, I was having one of those mornings where certain things were going on that I can't necessarily pinpoint as to why. But I was having some self-doubts about, is actually what I'm doing that good? Like, should I just give up? Like, I was having one of those.
It happens to everyone. It absolutely happens to everybody. But I think just always coming back to your reason why you're doing it, and you being able to, or anybody who's in this space as a facilitator, being able to offer what you do, as we were talking about earlier, this really is a space where lives are changed, and that opportunity for life-changing experiences is honestly very real, and that service as a either a breathwork facilitator or cold water, whatever it is. You being able to charge for that and being able to have that as your general day-to-day job, if you like, and that's your means of income, all that means is you're able to help so many more people. So for me, it's about spreading your message. This is exactly what you do. Getting really clear as to what it is that you do. Exactly.
We do some stuff with the mentoring course with Oxford Mentor, where we go like at the start. It's like one of the tasks I give people as a homework is like, can you say what you do in one sentence?
Yeah.
And it can be really difficult to get that.
Of course it can do. I like to call it an elevator pitch. If you're in an elevator with somebody or a lift or whatever, or if you're in a queue at a restaurant.
At it, by the way, and I hate it.
What do you do?
Because
I do breathwork.
Yeah, because when you go teach people how to breathe, like I just almost like as I'm saying it, I like give up on myself. if I think that they're not interested, if I know they're interested, I'll be like, great. But if I'm like, I know you're going to think this is stupid.
But I think also just it doesn't matter who you're talking with. If you're confident in it, they'll buy into it. I do breath work. They're like, huh? What does that even mean? Or I teach people to breathe. They're like, huh? That intrigue, I think, is a really powerful tool to sort of get. But being confident in whatever it is exactly that you're doing, having a really clear idea as to who the perfect person is that you want to be working with. So for us, when I first launched the business, it was predominantly athletes that we were working with. That shifted very quickly because majority of individuals now using ice baths are using it for their mental health space and their general wellness, which is a much broader kind of demographic. But get specific as to who it is you want to be working with.
So is your ideal customer changed now from what you started with?
It's different. It's add-ons. So athletes are still very much a big part of who we are targeting and trying to get in front of. But also it's your average Tom, Dick and Harry, because whether it's a business owner who's in a high stress job, and stress again is another interesting thing, because just because you're a business owner doesn't actually mean that the actual stress levels you feel are any different to anybody else who's doing, as a nurse, for example. You could probably argue that a nurse's stress levels are going to be way higher than many business owners. The pay disparity, that's another thing to talk through, because that needs obviously looking at. But the regulation of that stress is still necessary, no matter what that kind of role is. And for me, the ice bath is just a tool to be able to help regulate or learn to self-regulate within those stressful situations. I was talking with a friend the other day who's a celeb, yada yada, but he was saying that he was just going on to a show and he'd not presented for a little while, and he said it hasn't happened for ages, but I got this little anxious flutter in my heart, and he goes, I never get that. Well, what's going on? And he said it was so funny because I took myself literally, and he says, I'm not telling rubbish or anything. I took myself back into the ice bath because all I was doing was breathing. So I took myself back there. I took a deep breath in. Mentally took himself back, and he's in his ice bath, and he's just slowing his breath down. And his heart rate was able to come straight back down again, and he's out doing what he does best, and it was done. But you can use the ice bath in real world situations or lessons from the ice bath,
exactly.
whether that be patience, whether that be regulating
That's
stress
where the goal
levels.
of it is
100%.
rather than winning at ice baths each morning, it more like, how does it make me be a better human, better person, more resilient, and tools like with the learning how the breath will help regulate me in real life situations. A bit like how we spoke earlier when we were doing some rib mechanics stuff. We did it lying on the floor, and you were asking some questions about like, okay, well, how does this work out? And it's like, well, we're going to do it here because you can have the floor to feel your back and blah, 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 and it's easier. But then it doesn't stop here, because it actually needs you to be able to breathe well when you're talking, sitting, doing, running, walking, lifting weights, whatever. And that's where the gold comes in, when we've actually changed our natural sort of responses, our ability to, be a little bit more in control of our response, a bit more regulated with how we deal with life.
No, definitely. And that's a big part of it. But I think as well, just the biggest thing business-wise and for growth and everything, I feel, when you're trying to develop a service or product, is just to remember again that people work with people. Okay. So you've got to be visible. You have to allow people the opportunity to buy into you, to get to know you, whether that be through socials, and they don't actually ever know you, they just know whatever you put out on socials, which is why it's so important to be real and honest with whatever it is that you're putting out on socials, I believe. But to be present, not just fake rubbish that goes on that you see a lot of, because your story and your experiences will resonate with the type of person that you're going to be wanting to work with. Being authentic and letting people know what your story is. Being real, being open, being honest. Because somebody's going to listen to that and go, do you know what, I'd love to work with them because I think they'd get me. Because they've gone through X, Y, and Z, and I can feel that, I can resonate with that, and they'll feel that energy, and they'll naturally be drawn to you. Yeah. So, and that's why for me, I try to be as visible as possible on socials. I use the stories all the time. I do the Q&As half naked in the sauna, and so many times I turn up to site and they're like, "Oh, I recognise you, mate. You're normally half naked, though." And it's all like, "Yeah, that's me."
It's the beard helps.
That's it. So just to be visible.
Yeah, there's probably a nice thing potentially to finish on then, of just and maybe advice, or it might be quite obvious, but we both said when we were trying to film something earlier that, oh God, like that when the more you actually try filming yourself, the more normal eventually it becomes. It's just a bit of practice.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot of the time people will respond if they're not that confident, they haven't done that much filming before to make something for their Instagram presence and being authentic. They might find it quite challenging. So have you got any tips for people that are like finding it difficult to
100% practice, but not just practice, because 9 times out of 10 you're used to looking at people in the eye. So as we're talking, we're communicating with each other in the eye. When you're talking with somebody here, there's no eye, but there is. Normally on the back of a camera, the back of the phones, you're going to have at least 2 lenses. Look at them. Don't look at it, especially if you've got the phone the opposite way around and the screen's there. Don't look at yourself. You want to look at wherever the camera is, because that's then going to be looking into the eyes of whoever it is that's going to be doing it. And just practice, practice, practice. The first few takes, you're going to go, "Ugh, I don't like myself from that angle," or I sounded dumb. Everybody does that the first few times that they do it. But
the first 1,000 times, it's fine.
And then some, that's it. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you become behind the camera, because it is a skill, but it's a learned skill. There are some people who naturally just you're having those kind of conversations, but it doesn't matter whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, because when you're behind the camera, there's nobody else that's in the room. So you can be an introvert and still actually be very confident on camera, because there's nobody else that's there. But that eye contact with the camera lens, I believe, is important. And also just practice, practice, practice.
I was sort of saying to you, just being honest, we were like, probably 15, 20 years, I started trying to make some videos for YouTube, and Instagram didn't even exist back then, when I was playing rugby, and they were terrible, and I was awful. It was horrible.
But you did it.
They've got 3 views on it. Whatever. Someone could go and find them if they want to. But it's just part of the process. I think, like anything, I like the way you describe it. Like, it's a skill and that's good, because it means you can practice it and get better at it, like 100%. Anything.
100%.
Yeah, awesome.
Mate, thank you so much for today.
Thank
I've
you.
loved it.
Thank you for your time. I've just about got warm after the plunge. Thank you so much for, well, 1, your time, 2, your friendship, 3, your amazing facilities and products, and 2, just
welcome.
for your kind heart.
Loved it. Thank you so much. We should do it again sometime.
Till next time.
Till next time. Keep it nasal.
He knows.
I know it.
He's my first guest that's managed to do the sign off correctly. Give us a thumbs up for that. Or subscribe and all that sort of stuff.
All of it. Thank you, mate.
Legend.